Hello, and welcome to today's presentation on keeping utility technicians safe in the field. I'm Bruce Herzer. I'm the Director of Marketing at Kaligo, and with me today is Riaz Lakhani, one of our digital transformation experts. Briefly looking at today's agenda, I'm going to begin with a bit of an introduction, setting some context for the presentation, and then we're going to walk you through 3 steps that are involved in using the Kaligo platform to ensure the auditable and consistent distribution of safety documentation to utility field workers. We're not planning on taking any live Q&A today, but you can use the webinar console to submit questions as we go, and our team will follow up with you afterwards to provide some specific answers. So just type your questions into the question box as shown in the GoToWebinar console. Some quick background on Kaligo. Kaligo has a large global customer base, and when you look at our energy utility footprint specifically, we work with over 25 energy utilities and multi-utility field contract service provider companies around the world today. Related, we enable a lot of field teams at oil and gas companies, and our customers include 4 of the top 5 global petrochemical companies. We were founded in 2000, and in 2006 we began specializing in extending SharePoint to enable digital and mobile workplaces. So let's begin with a little bit of background. We're here because safety is a top concern amongst utilities, and operational excellence depends on safe, productive workers. And one of the things that we struggle with, or customers struggle with, is how can we make sure that field technicians have access to the latest operational and safety documents. One example, the APPA Safety Manual 16th edition, which was published this March 2017. Well, we believe that SharePoint can help, and with 85% of the Fortune 500 using SharePoint, there's a great opportunity to leverage that tool. So for instance, this APPA manual is updated every 4 to 5 years, and it's important that you have field workers have access to documents like this, or more job-specific documents as well pertaining to safety. In this case, we're talking about distributing OSHA standards, and this is a premier source for safety compliance information for all utility employees. There's another angle to this as well, which is that empowering mobile workers is an opportunity to leverage increased productivity and efficiency for a source of competitive advantage. And mobility really is an opportunity within utilities. With highly governed processes, though, such as you find in a utility workspace, there's an inherent risk, which we'll call the productivity governance gap. And if you look at governance on a spectrum of low security and unstructured data at one end and high security structured data at the other, as companies have increased governance in process such as those involving field workers, there's a usability gap caused by tightening up and controlling that user experience so closely, restricting how that information can be accessed and who can consume it. And the risk here in this context is that workers go around the established process because they're cumbersome. And this is going to create legal, safety, and security risks. So we're trying to close this productivity gap to ensure that you have high user adoption of your critical safety processes, as well as high governance. And that's our underlying design goal for Kaligo. And we work to deliver on that through a combination of superior native applications that field workers embrace, while also giving visibility and control to process owners and administrators, so you can measure user adoption and compliance. And here's the technology that we use to enable that, and that we'll be showing you today. So our platform extends existing IT systems like SharePoint. It consists of a cloud-based tool called Kaligo Console, which allows administrators to configure what information is shared across the applications, to push policies, and that's also where you track and measure user activity. And then we have a series of native applications that span multiple platforms and devices, all built together to deliver great user experiences and behave in ways that users expect based on the device they're using. So today we'll be showing you the utility scenario involving Kaligo Console and our Briefcase for iOS app, but the process will be similar on Android tablets. A couple of details: the sync happens directly on the devices, so we're not moving content to a content hub or sync, and this avoids duplicating content and creating security risks. This also means there's no need for a cloud server in the middle, which would add cost and complexity. So with that, let me set up the first stage of our demo. And we're going to be conveying a typical workflow that would be followed by a foreman or a supervisor within a utility who needs to share documents with a field repair crew. and also needs to monitor their usage for safety and compliance purposes. So we're going to break this down into 3 stages. And in the first one, we're going to show you how to use Caligo Console to do the initial setup of your teams and configure what SharePoint content you're going to push to them. And today we see in our customer base that this first step is often one taken by a foreman, or in some cases an operations analyst or someone in IT support. But for today's walkthrough, let's assume it's going to be the foreman. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Riaz to take us through the technology.
So thank you, Bruce, and hello everyone. Today we're going to walk through a demo of the Caligo application. So the purpose of the demo, we're going to assume that you have a SharePoint site that has been set up where you are storing all your documentation. For this particular example, let's assume that we're looking at procedures and you are wanting to push to your technicians in the field your transformer repair guides. So the assumption here is, of course, we have a SharePoint document library which has all your procedures in it, and then within there you have the transformer repair guides as one of the folders, which holds all the documents that are related to the transformer repair, and this is the information that you want to push down to your field worker. So to set that up, what we're going to need is the URL of your SharePoint site. Then you will go into the Caligo console, which is where we do setup of an organization and all the content that we want to push down to the field. So once you're in the Caligo console, the first thing you're going to do is create a group, because you're not just trying to push this down to one technician in the field. You have a group of technicians who do similar work and will require similar kind of content. So the first step is to go ahead and create a group. So you would go into the console, you'll go into the group section, and then you'll add a new group. In this case, let's assume that we're going to create a group called Repair Crew. And that's where we want to add all our technicians who are a part of our repair organization to go and have access to these documents offline or on their mobile devices. So we create the group. Once the group is created, the next step is, of course, adding your field technicians to that group. So you will go into the users, and then you will go and add a new user and assign them to the right group. In this case, it would be the group that we just created. So now you have a Repair Crew user who is a part of a Repair Crew group that has been defined on the Caligo console. Once you've done that, the next step is creating streams for the users. Now, what are streams? Streams is information or a group of information that you want to push down to a particular group. So in this case, you may have different types of repair documents that you do want to push down to your field workers, but they don't all reside in one location in SharePoint. One set of documents could be in one document library, another set of documents could be in a totally different site in a totally different document library, managed probably by a different group of people. So in that case, instead of you putting each individual library and then your field technicians needing to jump between the SharePoint site A and site B trying to find their documents, what Caligo allows you is we have a concept of streams. And what stream is a collection of all content from various sites shown in a single pane in a single stream for your user. So let's create a stream in this case. So you would go to the streams and you would create a new stream. You would add a stream called Repair Guides. And then once you've created the stream, that's when you'll pin the locations that you want. Locations are nothing different but a SharePoint site or a SharePoint location. It could be a document library, it could be a folder within a document library, but you could pin those locations within the stream so that your end user doesn't have to go look for information everywhere. So this could be one document library from one site and a totally different document library from a totally different site. You would configure all of that, add the locations, give it a nice logical name so that it's not confusing for your users. You're not seeing a crazy URL there. You're seeing a friendly name for that stream when your field technicians are accessing the content. Once the stream has been created and the sites have been added to the stream, Then you can go on to the next step, which is basically setting up the device for the user or your field technicians to use the stream and the information that you just shared with them. So now switching gears, talking about worker safety and how do we keep our workers safe by providing them access to content that they need when they're in the field, whether they're online or even offline in cases where they don't have the network, have access to information that they need to do their job safely in the field. So let's jump into that scenario. What does a field worker do? A field worker has a tablet, whether it's an iPad or an Android device. They would then use the tablet. We'll have the Caligo iOS briefcase app installed in this case because we're assuming that we're using an iPad. You launch the Caligo briefcase app, and the first screen that you see is, of course, for the user to sign in. This is where the end user or your field technician is going to sign in with their email address, which is what is tied to the user that we created on console. We're assuming that we're federated here, so we're not going to look at a use case where we're seeing a smooth transition from the user getting assigned to console, logging into console, and then a smooth transition into the SharePoint sites that we have. So the field technician, of course, will sign in with their email address. They'll be prompted for the password. They enter the password in. It launches the Caligo application. As soon as it starts syncing, the first time, of course, it has to be connected for it to bring down all the configuration that we have put into console. So as soon as they connect, it will automatically detect that this particular user is a part of a group that we had created. And the documents that are in that group or the streams that we've assigned in that group now need to be pushed down to this user in the field. So as you can see, the DW Energy stream is being pushed down, and as a part of that stream, they are seeing the procedures documents that have been assigned to that particular stream. In this case, let's drill deeper, and the field worker in this case is looking for a transformer repair guide. So then they would easily navigate through the structure into the transformer repair guides and have access to the document that is being shared with them. So they can now easily look at this document. They can click on the document, or in fact on an iPad, tap on the document, and they'll be able to see the preview of the document right there in the single pane. They don't have to go back and forth. It doesn't open a new app for you to work through. It's all within that one app. Within that app, you'll be able to see the preview, you'll be able to see the details of that document. Now, of course, in situations where you do have a complex structure and you have hundreds of documents, you don't necessarily have to browse. We do have search capabilities, which will search across the document, including any metadata that you may have set for those documents. It will search through and give you the results in the search result pane, and very similar experience. You tap on the document and then you'll be able to review the document. The first time, of course, when you're syncing, it's in an online mode, but once the initial sync has happened, you can access the document in an offline mode as well, as long as the policy has been set to take content offline within your console application, or you've manually taken the content offline yourself. So now you can access the document directly on the iPad. There's definitely these documents need to be kept up to date. There are new documents or new procedures being created all the time. So in that case, your office staff, in this case your supervisor, adds a new document to your transformer repair guides, and all those documents, again, as soon as you are connected, will sync back to your device and you'll have access to all those documents right away. Couple other salient features I would just like to point towards is it does show the new flag for all the new documents that have been downloaded as a part of that sync, just to give you a flag that, even if you've reviewed this document in the field before, it is new. Maybe you want to look at it before you perform the task. And then once we complete that kind of drives us into the next step, which is making sure monitoring and measuring compliance. You want to make sure and monitor that the documents that you wanted to push to these field users to keep them safe are being delivered and and get confirmation that yes, the devices have been synced and they have all the up-to-date information that they need. This is where us as an organization take responsibility for our workers to monitor and make sure that they have the content that they need to be safe in the field. For compliance and monitoring, the supervisor can log into Calico console. And when they log into Calico console, you will have access to a dashboard, and the dashboard will be able to provide you with all the information that you need in regards to making sure that your users are safe. So let's start with a very basic user activity dashboard. So this shows you for the last 7 days, in this case for Jesse, all the activities that have happened for that user. In this case, like, when was the document downloaded, what document was downloaded, what time it was in the console itself. You can also see activities in detail. So you can separate out how many times did the user read the document or edit the document or share or sync the document on their devices. So a lot of information is available to you to monitor on a user by user basis. In this case, to ensure that all users are in compliance. A lot of times when there's a non-compliance issue, you can go back and look at the analytics to see what happened. Did the user have, or the field worker have, all the information that was needed? Was it delivered on time or not? In this case, will be available through the dashboard for the user activity. There is, of course, an opportunity for you to go back in time. So, it's not just real time. It goes back 7 days, 30 days, 6 months, or even up to 1 year on the activities that have been done by a user on a particular device to make sure that, all your members are not just safe today, but if you, for litigation purposes, need to go back and produce some data around what happened, you do have access to all the information and the auditing that has been done. While we talked about a particular field technician, you can also monitor the entire group using our group activity dashboard. So on the group activity dashboard, very similar activities are shown, like how many devices were synced and or all activities. So you can again get the breakdown by edit, read, share, and sync. How many activities were done just for that particular group. You can also break it down by devices and what devices they use to do that. In case you have multiple devices assigned to the field technicians. Let's jump on to the main dashboard here, which gives you the document activity. So in this particular use case, I think this is the dashboard that you really want to look at. So say you update a new document, you add a new document to your document library, which you want to make sure that is pushed down. It will show you a real-time status of how many devices got synced today. So that tells you that maybe there are devices, if I have 100 field technicians, only 20 updated or synced today, then the other 80 have not received the updated manual that I've put out there. So it gives you a real-time statistic of what's going on, how many devices have been synced, how many field technicians have the latest information, and how many don't, very easily from this dashboard right away. After that, you can also go a little bit granular and start looking into each individual document to see how many devices or how many users have synced that particular document. And in that case, it is very granular to make sure, let's say there was an update to a document. You want to make sure that all your users got it. You would then go just to that document and look at that particular document, if that document has been synced to how many users and how many devices, and that gives you a really high level picture of how many field technicians have already received the updated documents or how many are still missing this information. And steps can be taken proactively to address that, whether it is a phone call that you make to the technician to say, hey, you need to connect and sync up your device because there's updates pending for you, and or other methods of communication to make sure that the field technician is aware of the updates and we don't have a safety incident just because they did not get the updates. So this is where you really are driving compliance and monitoring and measuring the success of your implementation of this safety program that is distributing all these documents to your workers in the field. To quickly summarize from my perspective, we looked at how do you set up the distribution of the content to your field workers, how do the workers work safely in the environment using their iPads and their mobile devices to access content and or safety documents that you've stored within SharePoint that is now accessible to them in the field, online and offline. And then for you as the management or the executive team of the field workers to measure and monitor the usage and the delivery of the content to ensure their safety in the field. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Bruce, who will walk us through the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Riaz. Well, this has been a very high-level overview of one scenario for mobile workers that Caligo enables for energy utilities. Every process is different, and we'd be happy to share more with you in a follow-up conversation with one of our SharePoint or professional service experts to see if there's a fit for your organization's goals and what Caligo can enable. Please reach us at info@caligo.com or the numbers shown. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and we'll conclude the presentation.